With that, we'll bring aboard our first guest. He is a veteran of 17 seasons in the NHL, currently on a PTO, playing with AHL Springfield, making a comeback. He is Milan Lucic, and he joins me on the show now. Milan, thanks so much for stopping by today. How are you?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I guess that really should be the first question. How are you doing physically? How are you doing mentally? I mean, the two can go hand to hand. How are both sides of you doing right now?
Uh, like you said, those are two different things. But
Yeah.
physically, I'm doing all right. I mean, I had an unfortunate, pretty big injury in the
Yep.
exhibition season. I ended up having a grade three adductor tear, so that set me back. And I actually played the last three preseason games, battling through it because of the situation what I was in. And I wanted
Hmm.
to give the Blues something to evaluate. So physically, I'm finally feeling good again. You know, mentally, I'm just doing what I can to
Sure.
stay positive, stay motivated. Um, you know, it's been fun being around these guys here in Springfield. So doing what I can to stay positive for sure.
I want to get to the mental side a little bit more because, like, look, we're all works in progress. I've said this from day one. None of us are finished products by any stretch of the imagination. But the nature of your injury, like that, those are the skating muscles. I don't know if you ever had anything similar to that earlier in your career, but what was recovery from that like for you? Like, what did you have to go through?
Well, it's tough because touching on the mental side of things. Um, I don't think a lot of people realize how mentally how it affects you when you are injured. You're on a different time schedule. You're on your own schedule. You're kind of not with the group. You're on your own. Um, I've never had this injury before, thankfully, which is odd for hockey players. At some point, some guys usually get a growing strain or tear or something. But fortunately for me,
Mm.
I've never had this experience before. And when you're dealing with a big time lower body injury, um, it's tough because you can't go on the ice. Yeah, you gotta, the start of the rehab process, you're basically just walking. I
Hmm.
spent a lot of time just walking in a treadmill, walking, going for walks outside, just to keep the movement and the blood flow going. But that's really all you can do at the start. The first, I would say, 2 weeks. And like I said, it gets a little mentally taxing because you're used to your body being your moneymaker and being able to do things that most people can't do. So that it gets frustrating, but you got to just kind of mentally just focus on what you can control on that day, and just try to get, whether it's 2% better, 5% better, whatever it is, and control what you can control on that day. And then once things start feeling better, you get on the ice. But when you first get back on the ice, you have to be cautious because you don't want to redo it. I think that's the difference between muscles and bones and tendons is, when you're dealing with muscles and tendons, they have a tendency, if you rush them too fast or you push it hard, a little hard, too early, you can re-aggravate it or re-injure it. So you're trying to be cautious, but you're also
Hmm.
trying to push it. So it is mentally taxing. So yeah, but all in all, I mean, the recovery was great. They took really good care of me in St. Louis, and got me going to where I was able to get back with the team and play a few games at Springfield.
Who in St. Louis really sort of pushed for you for this opportunity with the Blues organization? It's always easier when you have someone stumping for you and in your corner. Who was that guy? Who were those guys? Who were your people?
I mean, from the get go, it was just talking to the general manager, Doug Armstrong. He was, very interested in pushing for me, and even from the coaching staff, Jim Montgomery and even Claude Julien, who's a part of the coaching staff. I would say those three guys were definitely pushing for me to, you know, come to the Blues on a PTO, because I had experience with all three of them in the past. So yeah, those are the guys I would say that were pushing for me.
I mentioned earlier, like nobody's a finished product, and I also have, and I learned this really early in my life, that I carry with me this belief that nobody wakes up in the morning and says, "I'm going to blow it today." No one. I'm convinced that nobody wakes up and says, "My decision is to blow it." As much as you can you tell us what the last couple of years have been like for you?
Yeah, it's they've a lot of ups and downs. I
Yeah.
mean, just going through a lot. Obviously, I'm in a better place today than I was even a year ago from today. Um, but like you said, you know, ev- everything is. I'm trying to word this the right way.
Take your
It's
time. Take your time. Take your time. Take your
yeah,
time.
it's you know, nothing is ever perfect, and people deal with struggles, people are struggling every day, and I think a lot of people suffer in silence as well. And I think I grew up in a way where you don't show weakness. You're tough, right? You don't ask for help. You you deal with it internally, and eventually it just piles up and piles up and piles up. And to your point, and I agree with you that nobody wakes up and says, "I'm gonna, just blow it all up today." And for me, I think there were a lot of things that I didn't deal with properly in the past. I mean, a big one, and I've talked about this before, was my dad's death. Who he 10 years ago, he decided to take his own life. And it was one of those things that I didn't grieve properly. And then a lot of different things started happening, and I just didn't deal with my issues the right way. And eventually, it just, like I said, it just came to a point of where my life was unmanageable anymore. And I knew I had to make changes, and I did over the last 2 years, with a lot of support. Especially, I would say one of my biggest support has been my partner, my wife. And she's helped me and had my back, and been a huge support for me through all this. And her and the kids are a big reason why I've been making strides in the right direction. And so still things aren't perfect. I
Hmm.
mean, there's no, to add to your point with what you said. So everything's always a work in progress. It's
Yeah.
one of the quotes that we like to use is progress, not perfection, because there is no finish line as far as self-care, self-worth, getting better, recovery, whatever program people run in their daily lives. There is no finish line to it, until the end. And so just finding tools and ways to manage myself, and loving myself, so I can have good relationships and love others, has been a big part of the last few years.
I'll tell you something about my past. When I was 16 years old, here we are in November, where NHL Fights Cancer Month is very much front and center for a lot of people. I lost my mom when I was 16 years old, and I didn't deal with it very well at all, and it carried well into my 20s and 30s. And my two passengers I carried everywhere were drugs and alcohol. And that was two of the more miserable choices I ever made in my life, but I didn't have anything else around me. And those were all the decisions I made were fueled by that. And it all stemmed from that one event. And I carried it, and I probably still do carry it to this single day. And I've thought about you, Milan, when I hear you talk about your father, and I can't imagine what that feels like. But that's another like dark passenger that you carry and you're gonna carry for a long time. I don't know how. I mean, passing away from cancer is bad enough. I don't know what type of tools I would need to go through what you went through with your father. Do you still carry that?
I do. I definitely do. Um, yeah, that's why, I said before, you know, people, you don't really know what's going on in other people's lives, because I think a lot of people suffer in silence, and I know I did, and sometimes an event like that, you just shared your experience with your mother, and even for me, um, you know, I had a really hard time getting vulnerable with people, and I turned to um, mainly alcohol, to mask what I was feeling, because instead of, because I built walls, I started to not be vulnerable, and I would never really express how I would feel, and also there's a fine line to that. It's you,
Sure.
you don't express to everyone what you're feeling, and it's not
It's
like now
true.
you need to be vulnerable to every single person, but
Yeah.
it's good to have people in your corner, whether it's three people, four people, five people, people
Yeah.
that you truly trust, you know um that you can be fully vulnerable with, and that truly want to help you. And for me, that's something, that I struggle with, and led me down a path of masking my problems more and more, just because of a big event like that. And not only that, like, I I was struggling. I had that event, and then I started to struggle with my play.
Mm.
Um, you know, and so
It
that
compounds. I
that
get you.
was
It
it,
compounds.
it
It's like one on top
yeah,
of the other, and then it's just like a layer, and then eventually,
right. And it's like I said, it became unmanageable, and from the outside, a lot of people look, it's NHL player, he makes a ton of money,
yeah.
gets to live this lavish lifestyle and whatnot. So how could somebody like that have any problems when, I think most guys deal with a lot of real life problems, like everyone else does in their regular days. But I think an important thing is like I talked about, is, you know having support and being vulnerable. I don't know if you talked about this, but when when Eddie Olczyk spoke about hockey fights cancer, and when he
Yep.
first started going through it, he he felt like he was a burden on people, but because people were trying to help him. And it wasn't till he started letting helping people help him, it helped him in his recovery. And it also, when you allow people to help you, it helps them too,
Hmm.
because they're being of service, and it helps them with whatever, they're going through, and to help somebody else. And so, if someone's truly trying to help you, then that's a good sign to let someone in and be vulnerable with that person, and not build those walls like I did. And also, search for answers at the bottom of a bottle,
Yep.
or mask your problems by trying to escape with that dopamine hit.
Yep.
So, it's a powerful thing to be able to have support and people to rely on. But also, you learn that you can be, in a right place to help someone else too, and that's a big part of recovery and dealing with your problems as well.
I do want to ask you about hockey here. I just have one more question, sort of along this vein about you. What do you want? And the answer might be I don't care, and that's legit. But what do you want people to know about Milan Lucic? You could say I don't care, like, and
uh
it would be a legitimate answer. You answer only to the immediacy of your family around you.
Yeah, I mean, I've what do I mean, it's funny because, I talked about a little bit about, being an NHL player, and, it's a great game. I love
Yeah.
playing the game. I gave my life to the game. Um, and but that's just a part of who I am. That's
Mm-hmm.
not that's not it's almost like a character, right? Because the person that I am on
It's
the
true.
ice, and
Yeah.
and and how I go about my business, and trying to help my team achieve a goal, and win hockey games, is not who I am, uh
Mm-hmm.
as a person. And so I guess that's really the only thing. All the other stuff is, I've always tried to be a good teammate, a good friend, good family member, and that's really it.
Okay, let me ask you. Let me ask you about hockey here. So next steps, next week. What's the plan? Next game, next skate. Like walk us through, if you can, sort of how far ahead are you looking, or is it just I'm just looking forward to the next time I'm on the sheet?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. It's hard for me to say. I'm just looking forward to the next time I'm on the sheet, because
Yeah,
that's where I'm trying to keep my mind at. You
yeah,
know, just worry about today. Just worry about today. Just worry about
yeah.
the next. Worry about the next practice. But because at the end of the day, the goal is to be playing in the NHL, right? Um, and I'm in a position where I can only control what I can control, and it goes back to what I just talked about. I can only can control what I can do on the ice today, and then see if there's an opportunity with the Blues. If not, maybe an opportunity with another team. But then again, those are things that I can't control. So we'll see how the next, I guess, couple days go, and
Mm-hmm.
see if I end up back, playing the game I love in the NHL more than anything.
Listen, we wish you all the success, and in wherever this ends up leading. It's pretty obvious that your head is in a really good place. I love the sweater. I think we all do. Looking at that, like you talk about, like you know what, like I'm a hockey player, but that's just part of me. But like Dad's a lifetime role, and it sounds very much like you're in a really good spot. Thanks so much for joining me here today. Continued success and best of luck wherever this heads.
All right, thank you. Have a great day.
There he is, Milan Lucic of AHL Springfield, currently on a PTO. Jeff Marek along with you. Hope you enjoyed the program today. If you did, or maybe even if you didn't, they can't all be gems, folks. Please hit the subscribe button. Also, a reminder, every morning, 9 a.m. Eastern, Johnny Lazarus, Colby Cohen, I call them the Impact Players. You might know them as a tandem that makes up the Morning Cup of Hockey. Also, DFO Live at noon Eastern. This year, your host, Tyler Yaremchuk, alongside Carter Hutton. Full day's worth of programming right here on Daily Faceoff, your favorite YouTube hockey channel. And as a reminder as well, Zach Phillips, our producer here for the sheet, said if you subscribe, he'll buy you a puppy. It's true.